At a dusty gas station off Route 66, a rowdy biker gang pulls up, their engines roaring and their swagger undeniable. They're infamous for intimidating anyone in their path. But today, they make a mistake. Leaning against a rusted pickup truck sipping sodas are three Army soldiers on leave, enjoying their first taste of freedom in months. When a biker mocks one soldier's tattoos, a smirk spreads across the soldier's face. "You sure you want to go there, buddy?" he says. Chaos brews. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows over the dusty expanse of the roadside gas station. A tumbleweed rolled lazily across the cracked pavement, the only sign of life before the distant roar of engines broke the silence. One by one, 6 motorcycles pulled in, their riders exuding menace. These were no ordinary travelers. Clad in black leather and adorned with tattoos, the bikers were led by Mad Rick, a towering figure with a thick beard and a skull-emblazoned vest. His reputation for chaos was as well worn as the highway beneath his tires. Inside the gas station, the attendant peeked nervously through the blinds, his heart racing as he watched the gang dismount. He knew trouble when he saw it. The bikers weren't here for gas. They were here to make a statement. He silently prayed they'd leave without causing too much damage. It wasn't the first time rowdy strangers had pulled into his station, but something about this crew sent a chill down his spine. Across the lot, 3 men leaned casually against a battered pickup truck. Army soldiers Kyle Sullivan, Marcus Grant, and Carter Brooks were on their first weekend off duty after months in the desert. Their banter was light, their laughter genuine, a rare reprieve from grueling missions. Kyle, the youngest and most eager, was meticulously wiping dirt off his boots, oblivious to the storm brewing. Marcus, the eldest and most imposing, sipped a bottle of soda, his sharp eyes tracking the gang's movements. Carter, the joker, flipped through a map, muttering about taking a wrong turn and blaming the other 2 for trusting his navigation skills. The bikers dismounted, their boots crunching against the gravel. They spread out like wolves, their presence dominating the small station. Rick's second in command, a wiry man with a missing tooth, was the first to approach the soldiers. His smirk was as crooked as his grin, and his swagger radiated arrogance. "Nice boots," the man sneered, his voice dripping with mockery. "Army boys sure know how to spend tax dollars." Kyle looked up, his brow furrowing. "You got a problem with that?" The biker stepped closer, his smirk widening. "Yeah, I do. You're in the wrong place, soldier boy." Before Kyle could respond, Marcus stepped forward, his towering frame casting a shadow. "You're standing too close," he said, his tone calm but firm, the kind of voice that made people reconsider their life choices. The biker chuckled, unfazed. "What are you going to do about it? Teach me some army moves? Go ahead, hero. Show me what you got." Carter, sensing the tension, tried humor. "Hey guys, maybe we settle this with a thumb war? Best 2 out of 3? The biker ignored him, knocking Marcus's soda to the ground. The bottle hit the pavement and shattered, its contents spilling out like a dark stain. "That was a mistake," Marcus said, his voice low and steady. The biker laughed, but his amusement was short-lived. Kyle shoved his shoulder. It wasn't a hard push, but it set off a chain reaction. The biker stumbled back, and another gang member, thinking the fight had started, lunged at Kyle. Marcus intercepted him with a swift elbow to the ribs, dropping him like a sack of bricks. Chaos erupted. The quiet gas station became a battlefield. Bikers swung chains and fists while the soldiers defended themselves with precision and efficiency. Kyle ducked a punch and countered with a jab to the gut that left his opponent wheezing. Carter grabbed a broom and wielded it like a staff, landing hits while cracking jokes. "Didn't think I'd play whack-a-mole today," he yelled, dodging a wild swing. Marcus moved like a seasoned fighter. He blocked a chain, grabbed it, and used it to trip its owner. His movements were fluid, calculated, and devastating. Even the gas station attendant, still hiding behind the blinds, couldn't help but be impressed by the soldier's skill. Minutes later, the bikers lay scattered across the lot, groaning and cursing. Mad Rick, who'd been watching from the sidelines, finally stepped forward. His presence was as imposing as a thundercloud. "You've got no idea who you're messing with," Rick growled. "This ain't over." Marcus met his glare. "We'll be here." Rick's eyes narrowed. He motioned for his crew to leave. Engines roared as they rode off, disappearing into the horizon like a retreating storm. Carter broke the silence. "Well, that was fun. Ice cream, anyone?" Kyle chuckled, rubbing his knuckles. "You're insane." Marcus didn't respond. He grabbed another soda, scanning the horizon. He knew Rick would return and it wouldn't be pretty. But for now, they'd won. The gas station attendant stepped out, lighting a cigarette with shaking hands. "You boys just made my month," he said. "Drinks are on the house." Carter grinned. "Now that's gratitude." As the soldiers climbed into their truck, Marcus glanced at his friends. "Stay sharp. This isn't over." They nodded. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. They'd crossed paths with a storm, and the storm wasn't done with them yet. The soldiers hit the highway, the old pickup rattling as it sped down the open road. Marcus sat behind the wheel, his jaw set in grim determination, while Kyle and Carter sat in the back, trying to shake off the adrenaline from the gas station encounter. The desert stretched endlessly, bathed in the golden hues of the setting sun. Despite the calm scenery, tension hung thick in the air. "Do you think they'll come after us?" Kyle asked, breaking the silence. His usual upbeat tone was missing, replaced by unease. Carter stretched his arms behind his head, feigning nonchalance. "Oh, they'll follow," he said, a wry grin playing on his face. "Guys like that, they don't know the meaning of 'let it go.' But hey, they don't know who they're messing with." Kyle frowned. "What if they bring more of their gang?" Marcus's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. "They will." His voice was calm, but the weight behind it was impossible to ignore. As if to answer, the distant roar of engines broke the stillness. Carter sat up, his relaxed demeanor vanishing in an instant. Guys? Company's here." Marcus checked the mirror again. Headlights pierced through the growing dusk as 8 motorcycles barreled toward them. Mad Rick led the pack, his hulking figure unmistakable. He wasn't alone this time. Reinforcements had joined the gang. "They're trying to box us in," Marcus muttered, his hands tightening on the steering wheel. Kyle swallowed hard, his gaze fixed on the side mirror. "What do we do?" Marcus's voice was steady, almost unnervingly so. "We hold our ground." The bikers began to close the distance. One pulled up alongside the driver's side, a chain swinging from his hand. Marcus swerved just in time, narrowly avoiding the strike. Carter rolled down his window, a wrench already in hand. "Hey, buddy, you ever hear of personal space?" Carter shouted, leaning halfway out of the window. With a swift swing, he knocked the chain out of the biker's hand, sending it clattering to the asphalt. The biker veered off, momentarily disoriented. "That's one down," Carter said, grinning as he ducked back inside. Another biker pulled up beside Kyle's window, wielding a crowbar. Thinking fast, Kyle grabbed a half-full water bottle from the cup holder and hurled it at the man's face. The biker flinched, losing balance for just a second, but it was enough. Marcus swerved the truck, forcing the motorcycle off the road. "They're like cockroaches," Kyle groaned, gripping his seat. Mad Rick gestured for his crew to spread out. One sped ahead, trying to cut the truck off. Marcus's jaw tightened. "They're trying to trap us." Carter wasn't having it. "Not on my watch," he yelled as he climbed into the truck bed. Crouching low, he grabbed the old rusted toolbox they kept there and began hurling its contents at the bikers. Screwdrivers, wrenches, anything he could find. A wrench caught one biker square in the chest, knocking him off balance and sending his bike skidding into a ditch. Another barely dodged a flying hammer. "Man, this is like a hardware store apocalypse," Carter shouted, laughing despite the chaos. Marcus spotted a curve in the road ahead and knew it was their chance. "Hold on," he shouted. He jerked the wheel hard, sending the truck into a sharp, controlled skid. The sudden move caught two bikers by surprise, and their bikes collided in a shower of sparks before skidding off the pavement. Carter whooped from the back. "That's what I'm talking about." Mad Rick, however, wasn't so easily deterred. He roared up alongside the truck, his eyes burning with fury. With one hand, he pulled something from his jacket and tossed it onto the hood. A small, makeshift explosive clung to the metal, its fuse sparking. "Marcus!" Kyle shouted, panic in his voice. Without hesitation, Marcus slammed the brakes. The truck lurched to a halt, and the explosive flew forward, detonating harmlessly on the road ahead. The shockwave rattled the vehicle but left them unharmed. Rick wasn't finished. He drew a pistol, aiming it directly at the truck. Carter, still in the bed, acted fast. He grabbed a crowbar and flung it with all his strength. The makeshift projectile hit Rick's hand, sending the gun clattering to the ground. Rick roared in frustration, clutching his hand. "That's enough," Marcus shouted, his voice carrying over the chaos. He swerved again, this time aiming directly for Rick's bike. The move was risky, but it paid off. Rick was forced to veer off the road to avoid a collision, his bike skidding into the dirt. With their leader temporarily out of commission, the remaining bikers lost their nerve. One by one, they peeled off, retreating into the night. Marcus didn't slow down until the headlights disappeared completely. The truck came to a stop on the side of the road, the desert eerily quiet once more. Carter climbed back into the cab, his face flushed but triumphant. "Well, that was fun." Kyle shot him a glare. "Fun? We nearly died." "But we didn't," Carter said, grinning, "and we sent those jerks packing. I'd call that a win." Marcus didn't join in the banter. He stared straight ahead, his grip on the wheel tight. "This isn't over. Rick's not the type to back down." Kyle sighed, leaning back in his seat. "Great, just what we needed." Carter clapped him on the shoulder. "Hey, look on the bright side. At least we know we can handle them." Marcus finally spoke, his voice low. Next time, it might not be so easy. The weight of his words settled over them, the reality of the situation sinking in. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. The soldiers drove for miles, the desert giving way to small, dimly lit towns. Marcus stayed silent, gripping the steering wheel as his sharp eyes scanned the road. Tension filled the cab, the hum of the engine the only sound. Kyle leaned against the window, his thoughts racing, while Carter sat forward, his restless energy bubbling over. "I'm starving," Carter declared, breaking the silence. "Can we stop for food? I mean, adrenaline only gets you so far." "We're not stopping anywhere obvious," Marcus replied curtly. "Rick and his gang might still be looking." Carter groaned. "Come on, we just ran them off. They're not regrouping that fast." Kyle shook his head. "You don't know that. Rick doesn't seem like the type to back down. If anything, he's probably angrier than ever." Carter sighed dramatically, leaning back. "Fine, but if I pass out, you two are carrying me." 20 minutes later, a roadside diner appeared ahead, its flickering neon sign barely readable. Eddie's Eats. Marcus pulled into the gravel lot, his gaze sweeping the area for any signs of trouble. "We'll grab something to go," Marcus said, his tone brooking no argument. 10 minutes, no more. Inside, the diner was quiet, with only a handful of patrons scattered across booths. A waitress behind the counter offered a polite smile, her tired eyes betraying her weariness. As they approached the counter, the bell above the door jingled. All three soldiers tensed. Two men strolled in, their leather jackets unmistakable. One had a jagged scar down his cheek, the other carried a looped chain at his waist. "Rick's scouts," Marcus muttered under his breath, his shoulders stiffening. The two men didn't notice them at first, chatting casually with the waitress. Carter leaned toward Marcus, his voice barely audible. "Think they're here for us?" Marcus didn't answer. Kyle's hand crept toward his concealed knife. The tension in the room was suffocating. One of the scouts turned, his gaze sweeping the diner until it landed on Marcus. Recognition flashed across his face. "It's them," the man with the scar said sharply. The second scout reached into his jacket. Marcus acted first. "Move," he barked, shoving their table aside. The soldiers bolted toward the back of the diner, knocking over chairs. The scouts shouted, one pulling out a knife, the other grabbing his chain. Customers screamed and ducked under tables as chaos erupted. Marcus led them through the kitchen, shoving open a side door into a narrow alley lined with dumpsters. "They're right behind us," Kyle said. Carter grabbed a metal trash can lid, his eyes darting around. "Well, dinner's off the table. What's the plan, boss?" Marcus scanned the alley. "We split up. I'll draw them in. You two flank and hit them from behind." Kyle hesitated. "Are you sure?" "Go," Marcus snapped, already moving toward the alley's exit. Carter and Kyle slipped into the shadows as boots echoed closer. Marcus stood at the alley's end, his silhouette lit by a flickering street lamp. "Looking for me?" he called, his voice calm and steady. The scouts appeared, weapons drawn. The man with the scar sneered. "You've got a lot of nerve showing your face." Marcus didn't respond. He waited until they were close, then lunged forward. He grabbed the chain, using it to block a knife strike. The clash of metal echoed sharply as Marcus fought with precision and force, fending off both attackers. Meanwhile, Carter and Kyle emerged from the shadows. Carter swung the trash can lid like a shield, slamming it into one scout's chest. The man stumbled back, the air knocked from his lungs. Kyle tackled the other, driving him against the alley wall with a grunt. The fight was brutal, but short-lived. Within minutes, both scouts lay on the ground, groaning and defeated. Marcus stood over them, his breathing steady despite the exertion. "Tell Rick to back off," Marcus said coldly, his voice cutting through the quiet. "Next time, it won't end so well for you." The man with the scar glared up at him, defiance burning in his eyes. "You don't know who you're messing with." "Neither do you," Carter shot back, tossing the trash can lid aside. Marcus motioned for Kyle and Carter to follow. They slipped back into the shadows, returning to the truck. It sat untouched in the lot, as if the chaos inside the diner had never happened. As they pulled back onto the highway, Kyle finally broke the silence. "Do you think they'll actually back off?" Marcus shook his head, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. "No, but they'll think twice before coming at us again." Carter leaned back, a grin spreading across his face. "Well, that's one way to burn off calories." Kyle sighed, resting his head against the window. "This is getting way out of hand." Marcus didn't reply. His hands gripped the wheel tightly, his gaze unwavering. Deep down, he knew this was only the beginning. The dark highway stretched ahead, broken only by the occasional glimmer of distant headlights. Marcus drove in silence, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. Kyle and Carter, seated in the back, were unusually quiet. The tension from the diner still lingered. "You think those scouts will report back to Rick?" Kyle asked finally, breaking the silence. "They will," Marcus replied, "and Rick won't waste time regrouping. He's not the type to let things slide." Carter leaned forward. "So, what's the plan? We can't just keep driving and waiting for them to catch up." "We'll figure it out," Marcus said simply, his eyes locked on the road. Suddenly, Marcus's expression darkened. In the rearview mirror, faint headlights shimmered. 2 sets. They weren't fading. "We've got company," Marcus muttered. Kyle turned, squinting into the darkness. "Are you sure it's them?" "Too sure," Marcus replied grimly. The motorcycles closed the distance quickly, their engines roaring. Carter leaned out the side window. "Yup, definitely them. And they're bringing friends." More headlights appeared, and soon 4 bikers were in pursuit. "They're boxing us in," Marcus growled, pressing harder on the accelerator. "Hang on." The truck surged forward, its engine groaning as Marcus pushed it to its limits. The bikers fanned out, 2 flanking the truck while the others trailed close behind. One biker pulled alongside the passenger side, swinging a chain at the truck's window. Carter ducked just in time. Carter grabbed a tire iron from the floorboard. "Hold her steady, Marcus." He swung the tire iron out the window, narrowly missing the biker's arm. The man swerved, his bike wobbling before regaining balance. "You're going to have to do better than that," Carter shouted. On the driver's side, another biker smashed a crowbar against Marcus's window. Marcus swerved sharply, forcing the biker off the road and into the dirt. "They're not backing off," Kyle shouted. "They won't," Marcus said. "Not until we make them." Up ahead, a narrow bridge loomed in the distance. It gave Marcus an idea. "Carter, Kyle, get ready for a maneuver." Kyle's eyes widened. "Wait, what does that mean?" "You'll see," Marcus said, his voice calm. The truck sped toward the bridge, the bikers still in pursuit. At the last second, Marcus slammed on the brakes. The sudden stop caught the bikers off guard, and 2 collided, their bikes skidding in a spray of sparks. Before the remaining bikers recovered, Marcus floored the gas pedal, surging onto the bridge. The narrow lane forced the bikers into single file, limiting their ability to flank. "This is more like it," Marcus muttered. Carter leaned out the window again, throwing an empty soda can at a biker. The man flinched, losing his balance for a moment, enough for Marcus to swerve and force him into the railing. One by one, the bikers fell back, their formation broken. But as the truck reached the end of the bridge, Marcus's heart sank. More headlights appeared ahead, another group of bikers blocking the exit. "They've got us surrounded," Kyle said, panic in his voice. "Not yet, they don't," Marcus said. He veered sharply to the right, crashing through the flimsy guardrail onto a dirt path running along the river below. The truck jolted violently, but Marcus kept it under control, tires kicking up dust. The bikers hesitated but soon followed, their engines roaring over the uneven terrain. "Do you even know where this leads?" Kyle yelled. "No idea," Marcus admitted, "but it's better than staying trapped." The path narrowed along the river's edge, the water glinting in the moonlight. One biker pulled up dangerously close to the truck, his tire skimming the edge of the path. Carter didn't hesitate. He leaned out, swinging the tire iron with all his strength. The biker swerved, his front wheel slipping off the path and into the river below. "One down," Carter whooped. But up ahead, the path ended abruptly, blocked by a fallen tree. Marcus's mind raced. There was no room to turn around, and the bikers were closing in. "Marcus, what's the plan?" Kyle shouted. Marcus's grip tightened. "We're going through." "What?" Carter and Kyle yelled in unison. Marcus floored the gas pedal. The truck barreled forward, smashing into the fallen tree with a deafening crash. Wood splintered, and the truck groaned but pushed through, landing on the other side. The bikers skidded to a halt, unwilling to risk the same maneuver. Marcus didn't slow down, the truck speeding into the night. For several minutes, silence filled the cab. Finally, Kyle spoke. "I can't believe that worked." "Neither can I," Carter admitted, slumping back. Marcus glanced in the rearview mirror, his expression unreadable. "Don't get too comfortable. Rick won't let this go. This was just a warm-up." The truck disappeared into the darkness, leaving the battered bikers behind. But all 3 soldiers knew the fight was far from over. The truck roared down the dirt path, leaving the bikers behind for now. Dawn crept over the horizon, casting faint light across the rugged terrain. Marcus gripped the steering wheel tightly, his focus locked on the uneven trail ahead. None of them spoke, the weight of the chase pressing down on the cab. "We can't keep running like this," Kyle finally said, breaking the silence. His voice was low and hoarse. "We need a real plan." Marcus didn't reply immediately. He glanced at the rearview mirror, his expression grim. "We'll figure it out." Carter leaned forward, smirking. "What about that factory we passed earlier? The one with the big 'Keep Out' sign? Looks like the last place Rick would expect us." Kyle frowned. "And what if it's not empty? For all we know, someone else could already be there." Marcus sighed, tightening his grip on the wheel. Stopping is risky, but driving without a plan is worse. We'll check it out, but we don't stay long. The truck veered off the dirt path, cutting across scrubland toward the shadowy outline of the factory. Its broken windows and graffiti-covered walls came into view, rust streaking the panels. The chain-link fence around it barely stood, the gate creaking in the wind. "Cozy," Carter muttered as the truck rolled to a stop. Marcus scanned the area, his hand resting on his pistol. "Stay sharp. We don't know what's inside, or who." The soldiers moved cautiously, their boots crunching on gravel. Inside, the factory was eerily quiet. The air was thick with rust and decay, and beams of sunlight filtered through cracks in the walls, casting jagged shadows. "This place gives me the creeps," Kyle muttered, gripping the hilt of his knife. "Relax," Carter said, tapping the tire iron over his shoulder. "It's just an old building, nothing to worry about." Marcus motioned for silence as they moved deeper into the building, his eyes scanning every shadow. The faint sound of dripping water echoed faintly, heightening the eerie atmosphere. In the back, they found a small room with a heavy metal door that could be locked from the inside. Crates were scattered around, offering potential cover. "This'll do for now," Marcus said, setting his rifle against the wall. "We'll rest here, but stay ready to move. Rick's not going to stop looking." Kyle sat on a crate, letting out a sigh. "Do you think they'll find us?" "They will," Marcus replied grimly. "It's just a matter of time." Carter unwrapped a protein bar. "Well, I hope they take their time. Breakfast is the first good thing to happen all day." Marcus ignored him, moving to the window. For now, the horizon was empty, but he knew it wouldn't last. Rick wasn't the type to give up. Hours passed in tense silence. The three took turns keeping watch, each creak and distant noise setting their nerves on edge. It was just after midday when Marcus spotted sunlight reflecting off metal in the distance. His stomach dropped. "They're here," he said, his voice low. Carter and Kyle jumped to their feet, weapons ready. "How many?" Kyle asked. "At least 10, Marcus replied grimly. Carter let out a low whistle. "Guess breakfast is over." The bikers approached quickly, engines roaring. Marcus turned to the others. "We hold them here. Narrow entry points give us the edge." The motorcycles screeched to a stop outside. For a moment, there was silence. Then Rick's mocking voice rang out. "You boys thought you could hide? This ends now." Marcus raised his rifle, his finger hovering over the trigger. The first biker to step inside fell instantly, Marcus's shot echoing through the factory. Chaos erupted as the others charged, their shouts mingling with the roar of gunfire. Carter swung his tire iron, landing a sickening blow. Kyle fought fiercely, his knife flashing as he took down another. The battle raged on, the bikers overwhelming in numbers. Marcus barked orders, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Hold your ground. Don't let them through." Minutes stretched into hours as the fight continued. The factory echoed with gunfire, shouts, and clanging metal. Finally, the last biker fell, and silence returned. The air was thick with gunpowder. Marcus, Carter, and Kyle stood amidst the wreckage, their breaths ragged. "We made it," Kyle said, barely above a whisper. "For now," Marcus replied, his tone grim, "but this isn't over." The factory stood eerily quiet in the aftermath of the battle. Spent shells, shattered weapons, and fallen bikers littered the ground. Marcus, Carter, and Kyle stood amidst the wreckage, their breaths ragged, their clothes stained with dirt and blood. "We need to move," Marcus said, breaking the silence. His voice was calm but urgent. Kyle leaned heavily against a crate, clutching his ribs. "Move. We can barely stand. If Rick's guys show up again, we're done for." Carter wiped blood from his brow. "He's right. If we stay, we're sitting ducks. But running without a plan? That's suicide." Marcus crouched near the shattered window, peering out into the dimming horizon. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the desolate landscape. Rick's not done. This was just the beginning. He's coming back and he won't stop until we're dead. Kyle let out a bitter laugh. What does he want, Marcus? Revenge? Our heads on stakes? Focus, Marcus snapped. We can't sit here arguing. Carter gestured toward the horizon. What's the plan then? Hide forever? There's a canyon a few miles from here, Marcus said. It's narrow, with high ground. We can funnel them through, pick them off one by one. Kyle shook his head, groaning. An ambush? We can barely hold it together, and you want to fight again? Carter grinned despite the tension. What's the alternative? Wait for Rick to show up with his entire crew? I'm with Marcus. Marcus nodded. Gather what you can. Ammo, weapons, supplies. We leave in 10. The 3 soldiers scavenged quickly. Carter found a shotgun and a handful of shells, while Kyle pocketed knives and reloaded his pistol. Marcus checked his rifle, his jaw set. As they prepared to leave, the faint rumble of engines reached them. Marcus froze, his grip tightening on his weapon. They're coming. We need to move. Now. The trio slipped out the back of the factory, moving swiftly through the barren scrubland. The roar of motorcycles grew louder, echoing through the air. Marcus led them at a relentless pace, not daring to stop until they reached the canyon. The sun had set by the time they arrived. Shadows crept across the jagged cliffs and narrow paths, the air cooler in the canyon's depths. Marcus surveyed the terrain, his expression hard. This is it. Kyle, take the high ground. Carter, you're with me. Kyle hesitated, glancing at the steep cliffs. What if they flank us? Marcus's voice was firm. Then we fight, but if we hold here, we have a shot. Kyle nodded and climbed the rocky slope, while Carter positioned himself behind a boulder, shotgun ready. Marcus crouched nearby, his rifle trained on the canyon entrance. Minutes passed, stretching into what felt like hours. The sound of engines grew louder, reverberating through the canyon walls. One by one, the bikers appeared, their headlights piercing the darkness. Wait for my signal, Marcus whispered. The bikers advanced cautiously, their movements deliberate. Rick's voice echoed, taunting. Find them. End this. Marcus's finger tightened on the trigger. Now. Gunfire erupted, breaking the canyon's stillness. Marcus's shots were precise, each one finding its mark. Carter's shotgun boomed, the blasts echoing off the cliffs. From above, Kyle rained down fire, his knives and bullets striking with deadly accuracy. The bikers retaliated fiercely. Bullets ricocheted off rocks and the air filled with shouts and the roar of engines. One biker climbed toward Kyle, but the soldier met him with a swift knife strike. Carter grunted as a bullet grazed his arm but kept firing. How many of these guys are there? Too many, Marcus said, reloading, but we hold the line. Rick appeared at the front, his bike roaring as he charged forward. Marcus aimed and fired, the shot grazing Rick's shoulder. The biker snarled but kept coming. We've got more incoming, Kyle shouted from above. Another group of bikers approached, their headlights slicing through the dust. We can't hold this much longer, Carter said, his tone strained. Marcus's eyes scanned the terrain. Then he saw it. A cluster of boulders perched above the path. Kyle, the rocks. Bring them down. Kyle climbed higher, his movement swift despite the chaos. He wedged his knife into a crack, leveraging the rocks loose. With one final push, the boulders tumbled, crashing onto the path below. The avalanche was devastating. Dust and debris filled the air, scattering the bikers and breaking their formation. Marcus and Carter pressed the advantage, picking off the stragglers. When the dust settled, silence returned to the canyon. The remaining bikers had fled, and Rick was nowhere to be seen. Marcus lowered his rifle, his chest heaving. Think we got him? Carter asked, his voice heavy with exhaustion. Marcus scanned the wreckage, his face unreadable. For now. Kyle climbed down, his face streaked with dirt and sweat. We need to move before they regroup. Marcus nodded. This isn't over, but for now, we've won." The three soldiers turned and walked away from the canyon, their steps heavy but resolute. Whatever came next, they would face it together,